Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast, episode 14. This week, we're going to have kind of a random discussion. We hope you enjoy. All right, guys, let's get into it. Yeah, so, Dad, what were you going to say about but we were talking about He-Man first.
Oh, with He-Man, there is a lot of semblance in this one to the remake from, and we talked about this earlier, is it 2010, 2011,
13, I think it was.
2013?
Or
Right
no,
down.
2003, Dad. It was really early.
Oh, I thought it was later
a
than
long
that.
time ago.
Because that one came out before the Thundercats.
Thundercats. Yeah.
But there are some shots where you can compare the animation style and it's almost dead on. So I'm just wondering how much inspiration came from that later version, because they're talking about how much they took inspiration from the original series, but it doesn't show in the animation style. Now,
Well,
granted,
this is a direct sequel, right? Like it's supposed to be immediately following the events of the original series and all that stuff.
The original series. Yeah, it was 2002.
Okay, 2002.
The cartoon, the remake series.
Well, I guess there's going to do a lot of flashbacks, because aren't they talking about showing how Caldor became?
Well, I don't know. I haven't looked into the whole thing of what he's doing. I know that just based on some of the toys, it looks like Skeletor is going to get some kind of master power or whatever that they're going to be dealing with. But I don't know if it's going to be like in the first couple episodes or something, or later on, just because there's like a $30 figure that's where he's got all this armor, I guess, in kind of reference to the original movie.
Because I heard they were still going to keep the part where he is related to King Randor.
And if they do that, that's more towards.
Then because he was not related from anybody in the original.
Yeah.
So like what I was saying earlier, right? I'd heard some rumors and things coming up about how the series wasn't going to be so much about He-Man as it was going to be about like some of the side characters. So I went and I looked it up, and the synopsis for the show reads: in the new series, following a cataclysmic battle between He-Man and Skeletor, Eternia is fractured and the Guardians of Grayskull are scattered. And after decades of secrets tore them apart, it's up to Teela to reunite the broken band of heroes and solve the mystery of the missing Sword of Power in a race against time to restore Eternia and prevent the end of the universe. That is the synopsis for that show. So that's kind of what I was hearing. It's like episode 1, episode 2 is going to be He-Man and kind of He-Man centric. And then after that, it's going to dovetail off into like Teela and all the little, and a bunch of the side characters. And it's going to focus more on them and less on Adam.
Are they going to turn her into Teal Ray?
I think so. But I don't know.
She's going to grab the sword of Omen. Oh no, wrong cartoon. What was the sword? Sword of Power.
Sword of
and
Power.
go. He-Man's going to go. And then revert back into Prince.
Adam. Yeah.
I'm going to go hide. I'm going to go hide in a swamp with Merman.
Yeah, and like I know, and the reason why I was kind of wondering about that was I saw some pictures of what I guess was Teela, but she looks completely different than like any of the other iterations. She has a lot shorter hair. She just looks a lot like more built, I think is I guess a good way to put it. It's like, I don't know. It's one of those redesigns where I'm like, okay, I know what you're doing. And once I read that synopsis, I was like, I know what you're doing. Okay.
Well, this is Kevin Smith, so
right. But Kevin Smith like was going, because there was some, YouTube group that I forget what they're called, but they're one of those groups that like complained a lot about the changes to She-Ra and all that stuff. And they had originally they claimed that they had heard from an insider about these changes, that about this show was going to be Teela focused, and she was going to have a girlfriend and all that stuff. And they it's not that they were talking bad about it. They're like, hey, we're not too sure about y'all calling this He-Man and the Masters of the Universe when it's not really going to be about He-Man and all that. It's going to focus more on these other characters. And Kevin Smith came out and like blasted them and said, no, none of this is true. and he just went off on them and basically said that all the stuff they were saying wasn't right. But if these synopsises are right,
then they were correct.
They were correct. And Kevin Smith was, I don't know if there was rewrites after the fact that changed things up or what, but
remember Kevin Smith said he watched not Nolan, but Snyder's Justice League, and it was completely done, music, everything, it was ready, it was gonna rock, and it'd be out soon. And it at that point he hadn't even quite got to the production cut of the film. So, take it with a grain of salt, a little too much token, going on there. And if it was laced, I imagine he thought he was writing the greatest novel on earth, and it ends up being what we're suspecting. I won't watch it once it makes that turn. I'm gonna tell you what, I watched all of She-Ra with my granddaughter. I loved what they did with that show. I thought if they'd allowed it to continue, they could have, because they brought in enough of the He-Man lore into it that they could have found a new way to include He-Man's planet in this whole story, but Eternian. But they didn't go that way, and they decided to end the series where they did, and I was happy with that. But I watched every episode with my granddaughter, just like I watched every episode of Voltron. My grandson didn't get to see all of the last season.
Watched all of it with Edward. Yeah, he liked it. But yeah, I know. I don't think Logan didn't get to finish it. But I mean, my thing about the She-Ra was just the animation. I just don't like the animation style, but that doesn't take away from the story. It's hard to watch when you don't like the cartoon art style.
I'd rather watch that than that crud like the Go Titans Go, and then what they did with Thundercats. Man,
that was awful.
I had to remember how expensive my TV was before I threw something at it when I first tried to watch the first episode. I was like, that is horrible.
But
I mean, that's what Cartoon Network lives on, right? It's all. I hadn't watched Cartoon Network in years, and I turned it on one day, and I just saw in the guide on the TV, it was these little bitty like 15-minute blocks of Gumball, 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 Teen Titans, Teen Titans, Teen Titans, Teen. It was like almost 12 solid hours of just nothing but Gumball, Titans, sprinkled in there a little bit of like Adventure Time, and that was it. That was all they had. I was like, man, what? And then you hit Adult Swim, and that's whenever they got off into everything else. But I was like, man, what happened? What happened to Cartoon Network, guys? Like, y'all used to have a plethora of shows, and now all of a sudden there's 3, maybe 4.
They did some really good ones, like Steven Universe was good. I actually liked it. I loved Gumball, and I mean, back in the day when they did what's his name?
What, Adventure Time?
No, the one about the pirate, Knuckles and Flapjack. Flapjack, man, I love that. And
no, I love Gumball. And like I watched the episode with the kids the other day, which has it. When I watched it, I was like, I really like that was a clever little touch where they were trying to find the secret burger the whole time. And the dad's going out and having to eat burgers at all the places all around town. And he's like, has so much burger in him. He's like sweating greasy cheese out of his pores and all that stuff. And then it got to the very end and they're like, here's the burger. It's called the MacGuffin. I was like, I like that. I like that, guys.
Well done.
I see what you did there. That was pretty good.
And regular show, man, I loved the regular show. And it went out really good, so I was happy with it. Sometimes you don't get an ending to a series, and so like they did. I believe they thought they were going to bring that back. I really do, and it never happened.
That was a whole generation of shows like I didn't watch. I mean, I watched a couple when I was over at y'all's house, but it wasn't something I was watching on the because between work and everything else. I mean, I was watching more anime on Adult Swim than I was any of that stuff.
Well, we had Aqua Teen Hunger Force. We had you had like Archer was starting about that time. You had some really good
Well, that wasn't on Cartoon
funny.
Network, but
No, that was on TNT.
Adult Swim. Oh yeah.
But then you had well, I remember Harvey Birdman. You had Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Oh man, there were a couple of
P-Lab,
other. Oh, the
2040.
the knockoff of the Johnny Quest, the Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that was good.
Mhm.
those were tongue in cheek because they knew they were being silly with it, and you got the jokes along with them. But when they started, the jokes became the thing. Then it was not funny anymore. You know, that's why I like what's his name, the knockoff of Rick and Rick and Morty, the knockoff of
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. Yeah, because I would so be that old guy. I really would.
Rick.
I'd be Rick.
Oh man.
I'm gonna show up at my Logan's house one day with my time machine, and we're off and running. You know,
I don't know. I think Logan would get in too much trouble in that situation.
he wouldn't talk like
40, no.
or, no, I don't know. Why? No, that's not him.
We were like, shut up, Grandpa.
Yep. Damn it, Grandpa. Why do you got to do that? She was hot with all those 20 tentacles. I mean, I'm a tentacle kind of guy, you know, or I just go in and just destroy history.
That does sound like something you might do.
But
Wouldn't it be fun? You know,
just obliterating history? Sure. Yeah.
hey, we're headed that way anyway, man. Why not pull a Captain America, but really just mess it all up?
yeah, but then you go like, you obliterate history and then there goes you. You don't exist anymore.
Oh, yeah.
The way, you just go into dust like Spider-Man and Endgame. I don't.
Okay, so
So,
let's play a little game real quick. What would you walk into if you could go anywhere in the universes? What would you do? Where would you go, and what would you do?
Okay, are we playing the whole thing of like I wanted to do before with if you had the ticket from Last Action Hero? Since we're gonna
No. This is like if you had the technology that Rick creates and just warp in somewhere and just do what you want. You know, whether it was a movie, reality, or whatever.
This still goes back into my topic though, because we're gonna.
Well, just do it.
It's the same basic concept, except
Basic concept.
it's expanding it, right? It's not just because you don't have movies for certain, different types of.
Well, could you imagine going into a situation where you have to deal with the realities of that world? So it's you walk into a universe and they just don't have oxygen.
What movie are you talking about? Or what universe are you talking? The null void universe where nothing exists. Well, they did a movie about that where the two guys walk in.
We could have
and go into the white universe where there's nothing, and the whole movie's them sitting there talking to each other. Yeah, I felt like I should be paid to watch that movie.
Well, it's like so. I was thinking about it today. Is like, watching the 4th episode into the Castlevania 4th season, and it's like that's a universe I would not want to go into. I can play it all day, but I would not want to go there in my real life situation.
Oh, well, that would be like going into Dawn of the Dead universe and just being plopped down right in the middle of it with no guns, nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, this didn't work out like I thought.
It's like playing a game. It's like, okay, you're all playing yourselves. Now, this situation happens. What do you do? And the only thing that you have available are what's in the room around you. How messed up are you? So it's like, oh, glad I'm at Vince's house. He's got a bunch of katanas and things.
I like my shotguns and my handguns and my swords, so I'd pop in. I'd stay here. I'll start it off since y'all are hesitant on it. I would go into Empire Strikes Back, sneak up behind Vader while he's torturing his son, and push him off the thing. Just walk up, and go boop,
sneak up on him,
and then reach down and grab Luke. Because he's conscious about his son. He's focused on his son.
When you can sense the death and destruction of people in a world far, far away, I think you'd be able to sense.
He didn't sense Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, did he? I have the high ground. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It's like going to an Asian food and they just chop that food up really quickly.
In fairness, he wasn't Vader yet, also. So,
well, if we're going to talk about things that we would go in to change a movie, I'd talk about like Jurassic Park going in there and stopping Nerdry from, turning off the grid. This guy's he's going to do this. It's going to kill like hundreds of people on this island.
Well, which universe? The book or the movie?
The movie.
Because it didn't matter much with the Raptors.
No.
Yeah, if you do that, then you don't get Samuel L. Jackson's immortal line of "Hold on to your butts."
Hold on to your butts.
Or his arm, just his arm cameo.
Oh, poor Samuel L. Jackson. He was skinny as hell in that movie.
The funny thing is that's the first movie I remember him in, but that wasn't the first movie I ever watched him in. Because it's like, Coming to America was the first movie I remember seeing him.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't remember. I did see him in, but yeah.
That's definitely the first movie I ever saw Sam Jackson in. Because there's nothing else that I would have seen that would have come up with him. But anyways,
wasn't he one of the bad cops in Witness, or am I thinking of somebody else?
I'm not familiar with that movie. I know he was.
You're not familiar with Witness? Indiana Jones adopts a little Amish kid.
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, Harrison Ford.
No, I can't say I'm familiar with that.
Wow, you need to watch that movie.
It came out in '85, so remember we're talking about like something that probably David was born when it.
Yeah, guys, I was born in '87, so you've got.
Oh, you weren't born yet. Well, now you have to watch it.
Yes,
I got to make your life complete.
Yeah, there's a ton of movies I've seen before I was born that are great. I'll have to add that to the list. No, I think the first movie just
had a really bad visual.
I'm trying to think. Sam Jackson, because I know he was also in Goodfellas. He played some like bit part. He was like a truck driver that was in the movie for all of like a scene. But I didn't see Goodfellas as a kid. I saw Jurassic Park and it terrified the ever-loving crap out of me with the beginning scene with the Raptors. Shooter and all that good stuff. Yeah, that good stuff. Let's see here.
You see now,
he wasn't in Witness, Dad.
Okay, there's another actor that's in that I know. It's just like, what's his name? Liam Neeson in the one with the glaive.
Oh, Kroll?
Kroll, yeah.
Oh God.
There were so many actors in that movie that went on to do other major roles and things I like.
Good movies.
Which movies?
I said good movies.
Good movies. Split Second was an excellent movie. Dragonheart was a really good movie.
Actually, I don't even wrote that. So the thing. Hold on. Let me remember that.
Yeah, Dragonheart's a great movie that has just not stopped making terrible sequels. Unfortunately,
no. They're gonna run it into the ground.
Kroll. Yeah.
Kroll.
This is the last dragon. Oh wait, no, we've got more. We've got pallets more over here.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It's like, he's the last dragon. They didn't have at the end credits that there was another egg somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, so where did these come from?
I mean, you just prequel it, right?
Okay,
you just
prequel. Talk about movies. We're gonna talk about movies that have like unnecessary sequels. You got like what, Bloodsport, Kickboxer.
Oh, y'all didn't finish the first one before we move on to the next.
Oh,
that is just wrong.
It's still on me, isn't it? It's still on me, isn't it? I don't know, man. I don't ever think about kind of what I would do in situation type stuff, because I guess the first thing that came to my mind, and I don't know why, but I would love to be able to have gone into the world of Turbo Kid and got the awesome like Mega Man style glove to just be able to go around and blow people up with energy blasts. That would be good.
How did I not know that was coming out of your mouth?
But I would also try my best to make friends with Michael Ironside in that movie, because Michael Ironside is great.
Not unless you were sitting next to him in Scanners.
Yeah, this is true. Well, no, you weren't sitting next to him. It was
He was in the audience, and
Yeah.
the other guy was sitting next to him. Yeah, I don't know. But still, it ended the same.
Yeah. And you also didn't want to be on his bad side in Starship Troopers and basically, well, really any movie that he's ever been in, because I don't think he's ever not played a villain.
Oh no, he was the hero in V. He was one of the resistance leaders. There's been when he was younger.
Oh, he was a hero in Starship Troopers.
He was heroes when he was younger. Then as he got older, like most actors, there's a period where they play villains, and if they're lucky enough, then they become mentors, and then they just fade. But unless you're Sean Connery, then you get to play a love interest for people 40 years younger than you are. Man, it's been funny because there's a retro channel on my dish, and they've been just bombarding me with 80s movies and like Critters, some of the horror movies from Spain and France, which are like, whoa, you can't really watch those sometimes because you're like, oh man, we don't know about horror. You think Saw was bad? They'd laugh at Saw. Yeah. Okay, so the wisdom of the youth that sometimes point out the fallacies of the past. Let me put it that way. So she was watching elements of Saw, and she saw these images, and she sees where the guy is trying to reach for his phone and he can't quite get it to call for help. So then he picks up the saw and realizes the only way for him to escape is to saw off his ankle. And then she was like, wait a minute. And she freezes the saw. She looks at the distance that his hand was to the phone. And she's like, why the hell didn't he just reach over and scoot the phone over to him? And I bet there wasn't one person in the world that's ever watched that movie thought of that. They've all were like, I don't know.
I've heard all different other stuff, right? Like, oh, he should have taken his shirt and used that to throw it over to try and drag it over. But yeah, using the actual saw would probably be the best method. And I haven't heard that one brought up before.
And I'm just so proud of the young. they make me feel there's hope, for some parts of the universe.
Yeah, but there's a new Saw movie out. So how much hope really is there?
It's in the Saw universe. It's what you're talking about, Spiral. Now there is supposed to be another Saw coming. Spiral. There's supposed to be all these offshoots of the Saw universe now. First one is Spiral. And while we're talking about what happened to Chris Rock.
Well, I mean, he's just trying to stretch his legs. And what's funny is Sam Jackson's in Spiral, so
he is.
We're going in a spiral as we go with this.
But he looks chiseled, like his face is like stone. And I think back to him when he was in Lethal Weapon 4, and he was just that happy-go-lucky kid, trying not to get shot by Murtaugh because he had knocked up his daughter. And in this one, he looks like he could just break walls with his face. I don't know.
He had to get ready to play that serious role of hunting down a serial killer, and you can't be soft when you're hunting down a serial killer. You got to be, especially not when you're standing next to Sam Jackson. You gotta inject yourself with some testosterone. You need to get ready.
I'm just waiting for Sam to be doing his monologue about, we're going to get through this and we're going to catch this guy, and then some kind of trap is going to just decapitate him or something. It's going to happen.
These motherfucking traps.
It's up to you now. I can't go on.
When I watched that movie, after he says, I'm sick and tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane, I turn it off. Because that's it. It doesn't get any better than that moment in the film. And then it's over. I look for something else to watch.
Yeah, that's since we're not technically in episode right now, that's another thing that I still think kind of need to get into is just like talking about board games.
I think that was like, well, I think we can knock out some short little things about some stuff, and then I know that I was talking with Edward and Jeff about possibly doing a since I'll have my second shot here soon. I got to find out when, and then Animal will have hers as well. We need to have I can have them over, just not a lot of people, but them over. We can play some board games.
So when you talk about board games, or because we kind of did do a board game, a little talk about board games, like the first games that we played, which were the box games, like me and Colin, and I thought you were on there, or I might have been Mark.
That was Mark.
Yeah, and we talked about like the very first games that you could get, Gam World and all these other things. Champions was the first superhero game that really came out that had a good gaming system. And we discussed Palladium and all those other games. I think now
the difference between like there's the RPG side of it where it's just pen and paper, dice, your rule book and everything, but like the board games, like stuff like behind me,
that's what I was going to say. That is something relatively new within, say, a decade. The
more complex gaming, yes.
Complex games that come with all the floor tiles and all the figures and all the cards and everything else. It doesn't leave a whole lot to the imagination, where the old RPGs did. The newer box stuff, you're following along with a scripted thing. Now, what was the one game we played at your house, David? Where we did the adventure thing where you're going around the world and trying to beat the other people from finding the treasure and stuff.
Oh yeah, that was Fortune and Glory.
Fortune and Glory. I love that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. And what's sad is I can never get enough people to consistently play it to where I can start implementing the special rules. Because there's special rules in it where like there's a Nazi Zeppelin that just travels around the world, and you can actually get on the Zeppelin and go fight the Nazis on the Zeppelin and steal the treasures because they just will track around the world and pick up the treasures themselves. And so you can just sneak onto their Zeppelin, knock them out. And then they've got expansions for it. One that adds essentially a Cthulhu-like cult that you can deal with. So yeah, there's a bunch of really cool expansions and stuff they've added to it. It's a game that takes a good 30 to 45 minutes to set up, just with the sheer amount of cards and crap and stuff to get out.
And you wouldn't be able to play that in this kind of setting. That is really a game that you play, say, with everybody around a massive table.
Well, you can. Yes. You just have to set it up a certain way. Like, you'd have the game board with one camera, and then you'd have like certain static cameras around that gets the view for certain people. I've seen people do like where they even have where there's a camera where their character sheet is with the dice rolls and everything. So you can do it. It's a matter of like having the right production to do it. I mean, the tools and everything. So, but remember we played Heroes Quest, and we played the, what was the other one?
Yeah, Hero Quest was really a very beginning of that kind of it came with, if that's the one I'm thinking of, that's the one that had the VHS that we had to watch.
Well, there was Dragon Strike was the one we played a lot, but we did play Hero Quest like one or two times, but we never had it. It was somebody else's.
Yeah.
But that one had all like the you actually had the mat, and then you had your like the things in the room that were actually made. So like you had the desk and stuff. Well, and then Hasbro's just did the HasLab version of that. And I did support that. So
do you remember the mini board games that we used to buy? Like we had the one where the zombie outbreak in the lab. There was the Martian invasion one where they were turning humans into zombies and making the insects grow. We got a lot of those at Toys R Us, but they were right there at that moment when just the little mini board games were just flooding the market. Some of them were so cool, and they, some of them would be really quick. Some of them got really detailed because when you go splitting off in the lab, then you're playing with everybody going off and doing something different. I do kind of miss those kind of games. I guess the closest equivalent you could like, what's the one not Rampage, but where you get the 4 kaiju fighting each other?
Oh, King of Tokyo.
King of Tokyo, yeah. That game kind of reminded me of it.
Yeah, the game that I used my son to beat all of you in.
That's all right. One day I'm going to teach him how to play Uno.
Oh no, you don't want to play Uno with my son, not one-on-one. He's hardcore.
Oh no! I don't want to play Uno with him. I want to play him as my partner, and you're the victim. Yeah, because my brother and we be five of us playing around the table, and we're playing, and he would burn me every friggin' time. I get so dang mad at him. If it meant he could win, he wouldn't hesitate to pop that draw 7 cards on my butt. Just eliminate me. So when we got to where it was getting close, then we would start trying to destroy each other, and then everybody else playing going, okay, now they're going against each other. We'll go against them too. And I was like, this is not how we work together to win. He goes, there is no working together to win. This is only one. I was like, okay, Highlander.
You ain't first, you're the last.
Yeah. Who is this now? Which brother was this? So we can do the shout out here.
Gene Allen Wheelis.
Mm-hmm.
I miss you, brother.
Miss him too. Yeah, no.
And that's my Zach man going off in the other room, huh?
Yeah, that is Zach going off in the other room. He's just a little fussy. Anna's got him and stuff with Edward. Edward's trying to entertain him. She dropped him off late, so.
She working late tonight?
Yeah.
What is your favorite gaming genre? I mean, and no video games. I like video games, but they detract. They take away from the imagination. They provide you with everything you need to visually see. It's more of remembering combos and moves. But let's wipe that out. And out of all the games you've ever played, what is your most favorite? And that includes Milton Bradley, Hungry Hippos, or whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm not believing that. Yeah.
So if we're talking genres, right? I got really into and have really enjoyed a lot of the deck building games that have come out in the last decade or so. I wasn't a very big fan of Dominion. Like I don't like it when. So Dominion was the first like big deck building game that came out, and the way it played was you had a static batch of cards for you to buy from, right? It was just like a pile of cards A, pile of cards B, pile of cards C, D, E, and then you had money that you could buy, and each one of those cards all had the same function to each of them. So as you were playing it, you could kind of in your head tally up, okay, I know exactly where you're at. I know exactly where you're at. And I know what you've got. And okay, this is what's coming. But then I got into Ascension, which was me and some friends played that game to death. And that one, it was a lot better because the stuff that you could buy out in the center as it came available was completely different. So you would get a card and then a new card would replace it. And that new card that would replace it could be, it was a completely different set of cards from a completely different line. They had all sorts of synergies that worked together. And from that game, there's been all sorts of offshoots from it. The DC deck building game functions very similarly to the way Ascension does. And then there's a great little, there's Cthulhu Realms, which is another cool little deck building game that if you know much about the Cthulhu mythos has a lot of really hilarious references. So like there's the yellow sign in it. There's a card called the yellow sign, but it's like a wet floor sign, but the wet floor sign has the yellow sign symbol on it. And so it's a clever little thing. But then the one that we really got into was a thing called Zeppelin Attack, which is a slightly different deck building game, but it's all kind of pulp adventure-y sort of cards to it. So I don't know what of all of those I would pick as my favorite, but those are definitely the genre of board game type games that have seen a lot of run in my house over the last handful of years.
Yeah, I don't think I've played any of those or that type of game. So when you're playing them, you're playing against each other, but you're buying your deck. Is that what's?
Yeah. So,
and as you get more money, you can buy more cards.
So the way the concept of it works is generally you have two forms of currency. Depending on the game and what you're doing it, the currency can be different things. So most games with this function are usually centered around like a fantasy setting. So you have like money or magic, and then you have attack power. And so what populates out in front of you are monsters, which require attack currency to beat, or items or spells or things that require either money or magic currency to buy. So you start with a specific deck, usually of 10 cards, of a mix of those two starting currencies. And then as you buy cards from the center area, it gives you different abilities to like draw more cards on your hand on your turn. They generate money. Some of them stay in play and active the entire time while they're out there, and they just perpetually generate one of the types of currency. And then so that's the concept of the games. And it's a really neat way. It's just a really neat game series that I've really enjoyed. But again, I enjoy it when there's that randomness, that you're not sure what's coming up. You have to be thinking on the fly. You can't just use the same strategies over and over to try and win. You actually have to kind of think, okay, so-and-so picked up this particular type of card. There's another card that's out there I need to go get, because I know that works really well with the one that he just picked up. Okay. Yeah. So it's like a give and take, right? How much of it are you playing your own game, and how much of it are you buying stuff to prevent other people from doing stuff? So it's a cool little strategic series of games that, again, they aren't as popular as they used to be. There was a handful of years back where just everything was deck building games, but they've stayed pretty consistent, and they're pretty enjoyable.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of weird because, Edward is still learning how to read, so it's really hard to play a lot of the complex games that I want to play with him. And of course, because of the pandemic, I mean, I haven't been able to have anybody over to play the Resident Evil 2 board game or Imperial Assault, but those are the types of I like playing the adventure. You have a set of friends that play, and you either play as the villains, or at the same time you take your turns as two things, or you have one person that's doing that plus playing a character. But like Munchkin is one of my favorite stuff. I like the Munchkins. That was the easiest thing that I could get into, and I can get with Edward to play and stuff, because it's really him just like, we'll help him read some of the stuff, but he's enjoyed that.
Well, and so that's where like that Cthulhu Realms game that I was talking about, there's text on the cards, but you don't need it. Like all the cards in it, all you need to know are the symbols and what they basically play to. And that's so you actually don't have to read like the descriptions of what stuff does on the cards. So like, here's an example of one, if I can get it on there, right? So like, here's the cost up in this corner, and then you can see like this destroys sanity. This is a draw one, discard one, and this is a draw one. And then, you need a yellow card to have been played on the same turn to use this effect. You have to get rid of a card to be able to use that effect. And so like, this is a good game for if you're like starting out with kids and they're not really strong readers, where it's
because of the icons are there, and those are things they'll recognize and learn from.
Right. So it's all symbology based is all it is. Yeah. So that's a really good starting point for that kind of.
Well, I remember when we first moved up here, we were all playing the Munchkin stuff. I've got Conan in the other room. I've got the one that was for Lovecraft. I've got the zombie one, and it's hard to play those things by myself because now everybody lives, either in Fort Worth or in Houston or in other places. So those are things that I like to try to bring out during the holidays. But the last 2 years is just, it's been rough. And so
because it's hard to do anything right now. I mean, as far as the stuff we want to do, I mean, I'd rather be playing a board game, role playing, or stuff like that. I mean, it's easy to role play because we can do this to, get everybody together and throw a game together and just go from there. Especially if we have like one of the modules or something.
But funny thing though, just thinking about jury duty, and I guess kind of taking it back to movies, something that really surprised me. My son's in a bunch of advanced classes, and one of the classes he's in is in humanities, which is in his schools, I guess, a combination of like social studies and basically English is more or less the way it breaks down.
Okay.
Because he has it for 2 periods, and it's kind of both of those running concurrently together is what it feels like. But they actually watched 12 Angry Men in there, and apparently he loved the crap out of that movie.
Which one? Which one? Did black and white, or did he see the color version? I love all of them. I've watched every one of those movies they've ever remade.
I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure right now off the top of my head. I know that after he said he enjoyed it, I was like, you know what? I don't own that movie. I'm gonna go out and buy it. So I went out and got the Criterion Collection version of it, because I think that comes with both versions of the movie. But yeah, so it just kind of blew my mind. It was just funny, thinking about how like he, because usually you think kids are only going to be watching like all the, big time action, like it's got to be just explosions and nonsense all the time. But 12 Angry Men, just for whatever reason, really clicked with him, and he really enjoyed the heck out of it. But
I remember when they would do in school, most of this was in junior high, they'd bring everybody in the auditorium and we'd watch a movie. It was like a special day, and we'd watch a movie, and we watched. First time I ever saw Guns of Navarone was that way. I watched Bullwhip Griffin, which was a Disney film that way. I watched what was the other one? No, I can't remember. But all of them are some of my favorite movies now. But I was just talking with Vince today about films like To Kill a Mockingbird, which I love. Love Atticus Finch. The
Gregory Peck.
Gregory Peck is who I was going to say, but
yeah.
Names just escape me. All I now see is faces.
Yeah, I got you.
You couldn't make a movie like that today because of the way society is about films. You have to correct them so much that they aren't a real representation of the time period that they're from. And when people watch that, they get a skewed vision of what the past was like, and it's funny to joke about. When I was a kid, television was black and white, and I could see where when I watched black and white movies with Vince and Amber when they were really young, one of them asked me, was the world black and white when you were young? And I almost busted up laughing, but I can see that association with it. And you think about kids now, they get a skewed version of what the past was like. And, you don't see the documentaries as much as you used to, if you do, it's on PBS or it's in one of those other and that people avoid that like the plague. And you just don't get it in school either. I'm really surprised he got to watch 12 Angry Men,
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked by it. But yeah, I remember growing up, we didn't have like a big whole school get together, but there were certain classes, right? So, the joke was I think it had to have been high school. They had Latin, right, as one of the languages you could learn, but no one took it to actually learn Latin.
Latin, French, and Spanish.
But the only reason why anybody took Latin was because the fact that you watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail about 8 times a year, because the teacher would just, every time a sub would come in, he'd be like, all right, everybody, they didn't leave anything for you to do, so we're gonna watch Monty Python, and the Holy Grail. I was like, all right, great. But there were some English classes where whenever I finally got in advanced English, because I originally wasn't, and then my English teacher in my first semester of 7th grade realized how bored I was getting, and so they moved me into advanced English the next semester. But because of that, I missed all the good, like, fun stuff like Dante's Inferno and all that stuff, and instead I walked in and just ran into the Greek mythology. But I grew up reading tons of Greek mythology, so I fell right into it. But so we watched that was when I first got to see Clash of the Titans,
the original one,
and Excalibur. And what was funny about that is, Excalibur and Clash of the Titans both have nudity in the middle of them, right?
Yeah. I know.
So it was so funny because the English teacher like walked up at those moments and had a heavy piece of of uh, of paper and would hold it up in front of the TV, and she kind of stood there and stood. There's just this little old lady standing in front of the TV holding the paper up to it, and she kind of turned and looked and be like, "Not yet." Y'all know what's, and she's just looking around. She's like, "Y'all know what's happening. Y'all know what's happening."
There were other King Arthur movies that you could have watched.
Right. Well, and then what's crazy about that is, I've watched Excalibur. Man, Helen Mirren giving birth, that kid, like, there's some stuff in that. I was like, what the hell is this movie and what is going on? Although it has one of the best, I like Merlin in that movie. He just looks awesome with the metal
skull cap. Oh yeah.
Yes.
And I like that actor because I'd seen him in other movies. Usually they're gothic or they're detective or things like that. He was it wasn't a Hammer film, but it was like one of the Hammer films. It was the first film I saw. He also played Sherlock Holmes in, I think, with Alan Arkin was Watson.
Really?
He was in one of them, and I can't remember. I know it wasn't Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, but it was like the 0.5% Solution, or it was the one. But he was a drug addict in it, and
they actually did that part of the character right.
Yes, and then they teamed him up with Freud, who was helping him solve the crime and helping him come to terms with certain what were his driving demons, and it ended up being something about what happened to his mother and his father, and he witnessed it. And it was just I love that movie. I just watched it not too long ago again, but I cannot remember the name for it. But I love the fact that they admitted that he was a drug addict.
If I haven't seen that movie, I know what one you're talking about. I don't think I've seen it, but I'm aware of it because I know I've seen stuff before about a movie with Freud and Sherlock in it before. I didn't realize though that they went the full drug addict with Sherlock, because usually everybody shies away from that, right?
Shies away from it, yeah.
Like everybody. Sherlock Holmes was a bit of a heroin addict, and he shot the white horse, and that's what.
And again, goes back to what we were just talking about. You couldn't show that now. Yeah, we end up with the kitty-eyed version. I love Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But he was a caricature of Holmes, and there was Holmes was a much more complex character, and I grew up reading Arthur Conan Doyle, Ellery Queen. My mom would buy me mystery novels because I loved them. I'd read them profusely, and those in horror. She usually bought the horror books for herself because she was into that kind of stuff. And as soon as she quit reading it, I'd go yoink, and it'd disappear for a while. I read The Omen, I read The Exorcist, The Heretic, and a bunch of other ones. It's in that old house, man. Every time I'd be reading, my brothers got so mad at me because I'd pull it out when my parents were gone, and I'd sit on the couch and I'd be reading it. And Mike would realize, he'd go, "Why are you reading it? Every time you start reading that stupid book, something bad happens." Nothing bad happens. All the lights go off. God damn it. My brother would be just cussing me in the living room, and we'd have to find where my brother was, and he would be terrified in some room hollering for us, and we had to make our way through the dark house, get him, and make our way to the front yard, and then go around the side of the dark house to where we had the old fuse boxes where you had to screw the fuse in, and then all of a sudden you find out you don't have that size, you don't have that fuse, and you're like, oh, okay, then we're going to try to knock on somebody's door, and if they had it, we'd go, thank you, go get it and tell our mom, and she'd fix it. Sometimes we were waiting on the middle of a street corner under a street light in the friggin' dark, waiting for my mom and dad to come home, and you always dreaded when you saw them, you're like, yes, and then they go, bye, stop. You always saw those red taillights and then back up. What are you doing outside? The house is dark. Did you put a fuse? Yes, you don't have the right fuse. My dad would always say, baloney, but that's not the word he used. We've got fuses. He'd go over there, and we'd be so, he'd go, hold the flashlight so I can see what I'm doing. And be like, I'm a little kid, he's a man, and I'm trying to shine the flashlight over, bend the light, like the gun in Wanted. bend the bullet. I'm trying to bend the light around him so it'll shine on what he's wanting me to show. And
That's
then
right.
he'd go, all right, shine it down here where all the boxes were. He goes, well, damn it, we don't have one. And Dad, okay, Dad, thanks. Not like we didn't know that hours ago.
Right. Yeah, no, and I mean, it's funny. It's like, so, me growing up, the majority of what I read was, my parents had some really old copies of King Arthur and Robin Hood and Alice in Wonderland and all that. But I mostly read Arthur and Hood. Arthur more than anything. I loved. It wasn't Lamort. It was
Once and Future King.
No, I think it was like King Arthur and his Knights or something like that. Because there's some stories that were in that collection that I've never been able to find in any other Arthur collections, and I keep meaning to go over to my parents' house and double check on what exactly the title of the book is, because there's one story that always stands out really well to me. Because I know that the Once and Future King or Kings of Britain is the one that the story of Merlin and Vortigern and the two dragons and all that.
Two dragons, yeah,
originates from. This one had that one, and it also had a story about, I forget which knight it was, but it's one of the lesser knights. He was a squire. He was trying to become a knight. There's this princess who's talking all kinds of mess to him, and he goes out with her because she wants him to go and face these series of 3 knights. And it's 3 brothers, and they have the first one, his insignia is 3 stars. The second one's 2 stars. The last one's 1 star. And the special thing about the last one is his skin was entirely bronze.
Yeah,
and so it was all about jousting each other, right? And he can never unhorse the third brother, but that final brother was never able to best him. And then finally he unhorses him, and in his rage or whatever, the brother ends up wrapping his arms around himself and crushing his own body. And that one always just stood out to me, but I've only ever found that in the collection that my parents have. So I keep meaning to go and try and figure out what.
I know the story, but I don't know which one I've read it in. Now I have, it's all in the other room. I have the original where it was like poetry, and it's 3 books, and it was written before the Romantics got a hold of the story of King Arthur. So it's really dark, and it's almost like the tales are more scary, right. And they were more like Tristan wasn't such a nice guy, but in the later stuff, the Tristan and Isolde and all the other stories, I'm probably slaughtering the names, and I've had that for a long time. And so the very first Arthur book I think I picked up was Arthur and his Knights. And then I read Once and Future King in school. And at the same time, I was also diverging into Robert E. Howard, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells. I read profusely. Right. And I would much rather be in a book's world than the world I was living in. And so that was my escapism. So I understand when people like to play video games, what escapism is. But for me, it was like putting the voices to the people you're reading, adding the personalities to them that you drew from what you were reading. And I did the same thing as when I got into comics. I had a certain sound for Spider-Man. I had a certain sound for J. Jonah Jameson, certain sound for the Hulk versus Banner and Reed Richards and all that. And it always amazed me when I'd be watching a cartoon that they were doing or something. This would be long before the movies. And they'd hit it. They'd get it right. And that told me that somebody else got the same thing I got. But then you get like Wolverine, who is an Australian when he's a French Canadian, and he should have spoken in a total different dialect. And other characters with it, they just do a voice, and you're like, that is so friggin' wrong. Like the guy who played Lurch. Do you know how many cartoon characters he was the voice of? He was Frankenstein Jr. from he was the giant robot.
The original.
Yeah,
the movie.
the original.
No, Lurch actor.
Lurch, no, the Lurch from the original TV series. He started off as a newscaster. He had this unique voice. He was trying to break into Hollywood, and he did a couple of off Hollywood B movies, and then he got the part for Lurch, and he was so afraid that he would be typecast with it, he didn't want to do it. They convinced him, and it made his life. And then after that, it gave him all this voiceover work because he did Captain Caveman. He was, like I said, Frankenstein Jr., the giant robot, and hang on, Buzz, and then the hero. And he was like characters from a lot of those old Hanna-Barbera stuff. And he was the voice of the Hulk from the original Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk TV series. And everybody thought it was Lou, but it wasn't. It was him. I was like, yeah, each one of the characters he did sounded different, but it had that deep baritone voice, I guess. And so I was just real surprised at how many characters he played, and I would have never thought he did all of those, and he did. I just watched a retrospect on his life.
Okay.
He had that same giantism disease that Richard Jaws Keel had, and Lou Ferrigno, not Lou Ferrigno. Oh gosh, I should be slapped for Andre. But I should be slapped for not remembering, because Andre is that is my all-time favorite wrestler and actor. I remember I went to WrestleMania with Walter once, and they had a life-size cast of him. It looked just like him. It was textured with the skin, and you could take a picture with him after he died. And I stood next to him, man, and I was like not even up to his, just above his thigh. And Walter took a picture of me, and he was like, "You look like a little kid." And I somewhere I have that picture, but that's one of my favorite pictures. And
yeah. Well, and it's funny because you guys are talking about books. I I read a lot of Robert Heinlein stuff.
Yes. You read, because you'd come and read my stuff.
Yeah.
But then you also read a lot of the novelizations that they did from the games you played.
Yeah.
Like I was always buying you like those, like remember Master Blaster and all those other novelizations, and then
the small ones, and then
then I bought all the Resident Evil novelizations, which were so much better than the stuff we get now.
It's
and
funny.
You read Star Wars. You read a lot of my movie novels.
Yeah, because I was more a movie person than I was at the time, literature person. I liked film, and so I was always reading. If I could get a book that was based on a film, which was almost sometimes closer to the screenplay that was used for the movie, it had more elements that weren't in the movie, but kind of filled in the gaps.
Well, that's because, like Alan Dean Foster said, he's like the master of writing. What is that called when you write the novelization of the book of the movie? They get the original shooting script, which has the planned events, but most often during filming, those scripts are modified, several times before they get through the film. And so they'll have a lot of the elements that were planned but didn't make it into the film. You can read stuff in the Aliens novelizations, the Predator, my favorite, Terminator, but the Star Wars stuff he did. And and that's why when he wrote Splinter of Mind's Eye, he was basing it off the information from the original Star Wars information. And then they threw him a curveball when Luke is halfway through filming Empire, decides, you know what, I need something here. We need something, we need a hook, something to snag the audience for the next film, because it's going to end open-ended. And we get Obi-Wan never told you about your father. I am your father's, dad's, cousin's, uncle's, brother's neighbor.
Roommate.
I know I mess it up every time, but I love that.
Yeah.
What does that make us? Absolutely nothing.
but yeah, I mean, but I was reading more of the comics and stuff, like the graphics that were coming out, like the future Batman, the original one, where
I was very proud of you when you read, and you came up to me and you go, I want to read this. It looks really good, and I was like, son, that's V for Vendetta.
oh yeah,
It's not like what you're gonna think it is. And he goes, no, but I like it, and I bought him all 12 issues of the book. Every time one came out, we want to go get one, and he read them all. And then I read them all after he would read them, and I fell in love with it too, you know. And I was like, he surprised me with that. I would never have expected that he would have liked that kind of book, but he did.
well, remember, like even too with like me with gaming and stuff, the reason why I got into gaming, besides the fact of you, it was inevitable. It was always my destiny. Anyway, no, it was the fact that like why I got into RPGs was because we were playing all the time, and then it got to the point where we couldn't play enough. So I was like, I was trying to supplement my RPG stuff with playing RPGs on consoles. But the cool thing back then was, you know, none of that stuff had dialogue. I mean, it had written stuff. So I was getting the same thing where I could have my own voice to what the character sounded like and stuff like that. Up to even like 9 was the last one that we had like really no voice acting in it, or it was all, you know, all text. So
I mean, I'll be honest, I generally turn off the volume whenever Titus talks in 10, so that was kind of not voice acting for me.
I was okay with his voice, but man, he could get annoying. It's kind of like, and like we were talking about earlier with Naruto and stuff. It's like I watched the subtitle version before I got translated here in the States, and then the lady that got to do Naruto's voice, I'm like, wow, this is so annoying. But I mean, it gets better as it goes, but it was like, wow, this is really jarring compared to like the voice we were getting.
Well, I mean, that's like the inverse of Goku, right? It's like,
yeah.
You watch Goku, the English version forever, and then you go listen to the Japanese one, and you're like, what just happened to Goku's voice?
And then all the Sun family
why is he
sound
4
like
years
that.
old?
Yeah, Goten, Gohan, all of them sound like, because it's all voiced by the same actress.
I mean, hey, more power to her. But good Lord, it gives you hardcore whiplash. Like, oh man, what just happened? What's going on? Why does Goku sound so?
It makes you wonder. That's the reason why Vegeta's mad at him more than it's the fact he overshoves him. It's like he has such an annoying voice. Kids do too.
Well, I mean, look, it drove Brawley crazy.
That's what I was about to say. That's what I was about to say. Now I completely understand why Broly hates Kakarot, because all he did was hear that voice perpetually for his young life, and it just instilled in him that hatred.
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
and what was funny? Now I watched them before my kids watched them, but I watched them in San Antonio when they were on the Hispanic channels, and they were in Spanish. And those voices, wow, they will never match what you ever think somebody's going to look like. Yeah. And when I saw the very first Dragon Ball and heard his voice, I was like, oh, yes, thank you. But if you like are a big fan of the old Bruce Lee movies and the Shaw Brothers and all those, you know how like they would always have the little effeminate guy who had that squeaky, high-pitched voice. And I watched one not too long ago on wasn't Amazon. I mean, that might have been on Amazon. But they had this big old burly dude, and you were expecting that voice. And he had one of those voices, and I was like, it just blew my expectations, just like.
Well, it was, you know, it's like we were talking before in another episode about Project Echo when they did the spoof of Kenshiro, Fist of the North Star, as one of the girls and stuff, and you're expecting her to have this deep woman voice, and it's like, I don't want to die.
Yeah. I'm in love with this one lady on she does a podcast with her husband, and she does voices, you know, like that. So when they're talking, she just runs through different characters that she's done. And I'm like, Man, that would be so fantastic. And she's I'm an old man. I guess I can still say hot. And I'm like, man, it's like having a different woman every friggin' night. And
Until she busts out the baritone on you.
yeah, and then I'd have to like, I think the cat needs to go for a walk.
We don't have a cat.
I'll go find one. Hold
on. But yeah, no.
What a Fred Flintstone reference.
Well, it's funny because, like, okay, so because of you, Dad, with me, and I know with me, it was like I got to the point where like I can hear a voice and I can usually pinpoint who the actor is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, in the new Castlevania, there's a character introduced that has an actor that we really love. I'm glad I got to hear his voice again. We haven't heard him in anything in a while. Malcolm McDowell's in it.
Oh, I heard that he was doing several animated voices in some upcoming stuff. So
yeah. So
I loved when he was like in the old Titans cartoon when he played one of the villain, the guy who could manipulate time and space. I can't remember what the character's name was. And then when he would appear in as other, like in Justice League or in one of the other ones, because
he played Metallo.
I have loved his voice for years, and I used to watch some of his older, more weirder representation movies, like the one about Clockwork Orange, but that was based on a book, and it was but no, there was another one where it was something hospital, and him and this guy are working in the hospital. They're doing renovations, but the owner of the hospital keeps trying to get them to skimp and do it on the cheap. So they decide they're going to rip off the hospital to make some of the money back. And I might be messing this up, but I know at one point they break into a lab where there are human animal hybrids experiments going on, and there's a goat person and all this other stuff. And the movie, I was keeping up with the movie till that point, and then it just goes off the abyss. And the guys who are running the hospital are trying to catch them. They're going to use them in experiments, and it just was. By the end of the movie, I was trying to figure out what just happened to me. And that's the kind of movie that me and Ray used to watch. The older stuff that Malcolm was into. When I guess you'd call it avant-garde or whatever.
Well, yeah. Speaking of avant-garde sheep people, I still think that the best sheep human hybrid is still from the movie Black Sheep. If you've seen that movie with the
the werewolf sheep that when they bite you, why did you bring that back into my head?
He was the
lung brush, but for the brain.
He was the brother in Cat People.
Well, yeah, but I love Cat People. I mean, when you go and watch the original black and white, it's only hinted at, with shadows of cats and stuff. And, it's like being promised ice cream. And when you get there, it's, you get to lick the bowl. There's nothing to it. I thought finally here's a movie where they're going to do it, and Natasha Kinski was his sister, and I thought she was hot, and all of a sudden the whole incest thing came into it, and I was like, whoa. And the end where she decides to, should I ruin this for people who've never seen it? She's on a ship and it sinks after it hits an iceberg. I'll just say that.
Oh, okay. Is Cat People the one? So there are two movies that I saw bits and pieces of when I was a very young kid that have left an indelible impression on my mind. And I found one of them. I had remembered it was a scene where there were these giant cockroaches that could create flame. And
that was called Bugs.
Yes, that's Bug. That's the one I found. I actually found it on Blu-ray randomly.
Yeah,
And
Bradford Tillman.
The part that I remember is like the first half of that movie, and then the second half of that movie becomes something completely different from what I was expecting. But the other one was they were at it's like a zookeeper at a zoo, and he's trying to feed what looks like a panther. And at some point, like the panther gets a hold of his arm.
Yeah,
and there's like blood everywhere.
That's cat people. That's cat people. Yeah.
See, that's the one that I keep that was the last remaining one that I remembered seeing at like a nanny's house when I was a kid, just seeing that clip, and it just burned into my brain. It was like,
well, it's funny because that movie is like, their brother and sister.
When they make love to each other, they can return to being human. They stay human. Yeah. But if they make love with another human, they turn into a cat people, and they can't turn back until they eat something. Eat human.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's just, it was right up there with The Hunger, which was Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie as the vampires. Yeah, and that was a wild movie too. But have you ever seen Phase 4 or read the book?
No, I've not.
Okay, Phase 4, I'll just set it up, but you should watch it. There's an alignment of planets, and it changes something in the universe where the insects, specifically ants, become intelligent, and they start working together, all the different species. And they start slowly taking over the world. They don't want to mess with humans, but humans are going to, you're taking over my farmland. You're attacking my horses and my cows. So scientists come in to try to figure out what's going on. And it is wild. I mean, it flips the whole thing. And you start realizing the humans aren't as good as we should be. The answer, I don't like the whole hive mind thing, but they are efficient in the way they do, and they don't understand humans and our thought processes. So they decide that they need to change humans to make us compatible with their species. And this is not, oh my God, we're going to have an ant person running around. This is, they change the brain, chemicals of the brain. I mean, it is phase 4. Yes. It's either phase 4 or phase 5. I don't remember. But man, that is a really good, and the book's even better.
Well, that kind of goes back to like bringing back, right, of movies you don't really see a lot of, right? Like everything's got to be blockbuster level type of stuff to see even the light of day, except for places like Shudder and areas like that where you've got the smaller studios that still will spend a little bit of money to go out there and do, passion projects and stuff like that. But that's where I really miss like weird, cool concept movies like that. I mean, I know they're still around. They're just a little harder to find, right?
I got to admit, to me, a good, well-made B movie is sometimes better than a blockbuster, because a blockbuster is just explosions and all that other stuff. But they just, B movies sometimes explore some of those interesting ideas, especially when they don't have a budget, so they have to concentrate on story and the acting, to help carry it.
And what's great about that, and something that I'd heard somebody, and I've probably said this before, that they've commented on before, is some of the biggest movies that we think of in terms of horror from the 80s were all just those directors doing big budget, write-ups of schlocky B movies they had seen back in like the 60s, right? Like, so The Thing from Outer Space, The Fly, The Blob, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. These directors went out, gathered those movies up that, were okay. You go back and watch them, they're fine, but they wanted to show a different way that those things could be shot. And they went out and made these, now considered classics of the genre stuff. And it's like, now, you have they're remaking The Thing again, and it's like, why don't you guys go back and find some good B movie or some middling B movies from the 80s and punch those up? Because, they're out there, they exist, right? There's tons of middling to good B movies that if they just had a little bit better effects, if they maybe had a little bit better sound or quality of visual or whatever, they'd be good quality films. It's just, trying to get people to buy into that stuff, right?
You know, it's going to be sad when we lose directors like Terry Gilliam and other ones who give us the visually stunning, but there's such a layered story there. One of my all-time favorites is Baron Munchausen. I love that movie, and I showed it to my kids when they were a little older. And those were movies I could share with a buddy of mine named Ray. Those were our movies. We went and saw the things that most people, you know, it didn't get brought out until it hit the midnight movies and became cult classics. But we were watching them back before they were that. You know, like even Alien goes back to It, you know, from space, the vampire thing that they found on Mars. Oh man, I just know more things because they're gonna ruin it. I know they're gonna ruin it.
Well, remember, it's supposed to be more off the book. Who goes there instead of
who goes there is not the thing. He didn't. It wasn't on a cellular basis. He could mimic people, and he killed them.
Mimic things, yes.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean. That's what they're saying. It's supposed to actually technically it's supposed to be the expanded version that his son did.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I tried to find that after I found out that he had written to fill in certain gaps based on what he'd found his father's notes.
Mm-hmm. See, because then that would be great. I really would love to see that. I mean, like I've told David before, and it sucks that, you know, the the prequel, you know, the fact that it should have been named something different. I mean, it should have things blah blah blah, you know, and a lot of it was because of the studio. The studio interfered with a lot of the production on that thing because they were doing all that stuff, working with both what was it? I know John Carpenter, but I'm trying to think of the what's his name? Was it Rick Baker? Who was the guy that was who did a lot of the creature effects on that?
Well, the one guy who did a lot of it is dead.
Yeah, but there
were people who worked with him that had a lot of influence on because they wanted to be practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so they whenever they finished the film, they came in and did CGI over the practical effects to smooth it out. But then later on, the studio added more
they went back
visual effects to almost where you cannot see the practical effects anymore. So that's again where the studios interfere with what could have been a great movie. I met somebody who didn't even know that it was a prequel. They thought it was a sequel.
Well, Andrew thought it was a remake, and until I told him it was a prequel.
I mean, what part of that movie are you supposed? Yeah, I mean, the opening, the title, other than the fact that, you know, putting together, oh wait, this is not the, you know, American base. That's your only hint throughout the entire movie, and the fact that they're the ones that dig it up, right? But with them being the ones that dig it up, it's like, oh, okay, this is just another remake of The Thing from Another World because they're the ones that, you know, it's like, it was just kind of one of those awkward things of they marketed it. It was an awkward way to go about that movie in every which way.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the sad thing is that they were talking about if this one did well, they were going to get,
they were going to do a sequel.
Russell with
an actual sequel. Yeah. With the guy who played, Keith David, and they would meet up with her.
Yeah.
And she would show up with the the cat, and then they would have a further adventure. Hey, my Zoom just went nuts. There we go.
Still see you fine. Yeah. But, you know, so the funny thing is just talking about movies that left an impression on your brain when you were younger and you were trying to like figure it out what they were. I didn't even know what it was until one of the YouTubers I watch was doing a review on it. But the movie The Rift, you know,
about the submarine, the underwater,
they go to the underwater research facility and everything. And The only thing I remember in the movie was like at the end when like was it they're trying to get out of there and Arlene Arn was it the one dude figured out that he had gotten infected and he's like, I got to stay back.
I got to stay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and there are a lot of movies that do that, where the kid, the guy or the woman realize they can't go home because it will infect the earth, and they're going to sacrifice themselves for the better of society. But you know, that goes to the whole. We talked about this a while back because I was talking about films based on on the story of the lifeboat, where you have people in a small environment, limited resources and supplies, and they start eventually either cannibalizing each other or casting each other out of the lifeboat, you know, whatever, to survive. And it's an old trope, and it appears in a lot of different movies, and it's never really acknowledged for what it is. There are just so many movies. I'm so tired of shark movies. Give the Jaws a break, man. I would love to see The Incredible Shrinking Man, a modern take on Richard Matheson's story. There are, you know, I love a lot of Heinlein's books. I'd love to see somebody do the movies on them, you know. And don't give it to Scott, because Scott, he will never stay true to a Robert Heinlein story if his life depended on it. Not everybody has to be a friggin' android, you know, or a replicant. I was so glad that he had nothing to do with the sequel
for Blade Runner.
Of Blade Runner.
You're getting your stuff mixed up. So Heinlein wasn't behind Blade Runner. That was PKD.
Yeah.
Oh, Philip K. Dick. You're right. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
I was saying the wrong name, but he still messed that up, and he really kept trying through 4 remakes. I mean, not remakes, re-edits of the film to prove that Deckard was a replicant. And no, just go make your own movie crap about that stuff and stay out of my stuff. It's like somebody coming over and playing with your toys, and then they don't put them back where they found them. You know, it's just like aggravating.
Back in the day when I had all my friends come over to the apartment and stuff, and I'd come find my figures in weird positions. I'm like, I didn't leave them like this. Oh, Jeff Pate must have been here. But yeah, no. What was it? We were talking about the idea for Star Trek. I'm never going to write this. So I can say this out there, and I don't care. But I think the thing that would they need to go back to form for Star Trek. And I think that the best way to do it is to tell a story of, like, you know, here's the idea, Paramount, Star Trek Frontier. And you have a ship that's a colony ship that goes out. It's during the original, like maybe 100 years before the original run of Star Trek, where they're going to colonize another planet. They hit something, crash land on a planet that has 2 races battling each other, do like a whole Swiss Family Robinson kind of thing, you know, but with a whole colony, and them trying to figure out to rebuild everything, build relationships with these people, and you know, having that first contact again.
But then you can't have big epic space battles.
Well, and see, that's the difference between Star Trek the motion picture and Wrath of Khan. Everybody wanted the cowboys in space, not exploration and science. That was the whole argument back in the old day. Are they a science-based organization, or are they military-based organization? And I would go, they're an exploration organization, and they encompass both.
Yeah.
They know that when they're traveling and exploring, there's the potential to meet a hostile race who, just by the sheer meeting them, then will find about Earth and might want to go back and then try to attack Earth.
But you could make this the prime directive, where the prime directive came, but they can't interact with undercultured species.
Yeah.
You know, there's endless possibilities of things you could do. You don't have to do what you've been trying to do for the last couple.
So David, let me ask. Oh, okay.
I was going to say the sci-fi series I would love to see that is kind of not exactly, but in at least the vein of what you're talking about, of crash landing on a planet and seeing how they, interact and all that. Except it's generations after the crash would be Dragon Riders, Pern.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would love to see
You know,
Pern.
I used to read those books to my daughter. I had what's her name? Who was the artist who used to paint the covers?
Oh,
I loved her art. I had to do
really
a
good.
project on her when I was in art school.
Whenever I found out that there was a book series that had telepathic, teleporting, time traveling dragons, it's like, yes, I will read these. Yes, it's like How to Train Your Dragon, Eat Your Heart Out. These things can do so much more, so much more.
And they were different sizes too. They weren't
Right.
just the big dragons. Let me ask you a question. Did you watch Man in the High Castle?
No, but Bobby did.
I haven't watched all of it, and I had just recently read it before the series came out, and I need to go back and try to watch the rest of it. I didn't like the fact that they turned the book into a film, and I don't mean them turning it into a TV series. I mean the Man in the High, the Man in the High Castle. What was it? The Grasshopper, I think is the name, if I recall, was the name of the fictitious story about if the Allies won.
Allies won, yeah.
Right. And it made more sense in the book of it being a book, because then that would be something that you'd be able to hide. You'd be able to pass around. With the fact that they turned the Grasshopper into a film.
Yeah.
I was like, I saw that first episode, and I haven't got back.
I made it halfway through the second, and then caught a couple of the third before I couldn't watch them anymore. I don't have that service anymore. There's a problem when you try to expand a story like that out to an ongoing series, that could go 5, 6, 7. You lose what the point was of the original, and you start focusing on the wrong areas and stuff.
You just loosen the narrative, right? You loosen the narrative, and when you do that, it sometimes loosening the narrative allows you that freedom to expand. And if there were certain characters that weren't, fully fleshed out in the original story, or if there was certain aspects to it that maybe could have used a little bit more attention and time to expand that idea, it's like, that's whenever it's good. But you can't drag it out for 8 seasons. You need to be able to spend an episode or 2 fleshing out those extra ideas, but then you need to come back to the core of that story to really, snap it back into place and keep everything moving along.
That's that legacy that you have to keep carrying through all of the arcs.
Yeah.
To keep focus and bring you back to where you need to have that end, or you end up with it not ending like it did in the book, and not really making a whole lot of sense.
Or they run out, the studio runs out of funding, or they cancel the show, so it never gets
anyway. I like Piers Anthony's books. I like the Xanth novels. What's the ones he did about the death? The first book was Death Rides a Pale Horse, and it was the guy is about to commit suicide. Death shows up. He gets freaked out and shoots Death, killing him, becoming Death. That happened long before the TV shows that had that same gimmick. And then he meets different people. He meets Lucifer. He meets different deaths. And at one point, the stories are all the same story being told by the different people through the different perspective of the individual people within the stories. I'd love to see those as a TV series. There are so many good books out there that just are not touched. And I mean, they did Lensman as a friggin' animated, and it was great. The comic was great, but I want to read the book. I want to see the Doc Smith's books turned into a movie. We're there. The technology's there. They would look fantastic.
It's it's one of those things where it's like Carter, right? That people have a hard time. At least that's the argument, right? That people have a hard time watching the characters that were the genesis of the. They are the monolithic creature that created all the myths that now populate everything, right?
Everything, yeah.
You know, so it's like people go and watch John Carter and they're like, oh, this is just, you know, corny, cheesy stuff. It's like, yeah, but like this is where superheroes started, guys. Like this was the beginning. This is what it was. And
Yeah.
there's still good, interesting, fun stories to be told in from those tales, right? Because they were groundbreaking for a reason. It wasn't just because, hey, there's a guy who went to another planet and he's super strong. It's no, there's all these interesting alien races. There's all this political upheaval. There's all these interactions. Like, I mean, the Gods of Mars story by itself, like whenever he wakes up on the River Is and is immediately being attacked by the plant men of Mars, and he's fighting with Tars Tarkas, who, you know, chose to go down the river with him. They find out about the truth of the
lore of the god. Were they the white Martians?
So it was the let's see if I can remember this correctly. It was the white Martians were the ones who
propagated the religion, right? And
right,
then
the
god
propagating the religion, and it was the black Martians, the ones that were running it
and
down at the end of the river. But then, yeah, there was the white Martians that were in charge of them, or it might have been reversed. It's been a while since I've read the book and to that portion of it. But yeah, I agree. It's like one of those things where, you know, you don't, unless you actually give it a chance, right? Because that was the problem with the Marvel film, or not the Marvel, the Disney film that they did, was they did a decent job of Carter. It was just they failed to market him, right?
What bothered me was there's still this clamor for Conan, right? And there's really no difference from Conan and John Carter, except he was a more sophisticated person, the transcendence and all that other stuff. But it's still a barbarian fighting in the end.
Right.
So, but why would you want one and not the other? I don't understand that. And then I think Disney's problem was when they took it away from Pixar, which that was supposed to be Pixar's original first live action movie. You took it out of the hands of like Lasseter and all these other people who were going to shepherd this film and make it really good. And it became a Disney blockbuster that they needed to make so much money. And they handled it completely wrong. They didn't build. I would have been doing TV shows about him, you know, Disney's all over the place. They own their own freaking network. Right. They could have been talking about building it up, while they're building up, teaching people about the books, about what happened, and about how they were all interconnected, because several characters talked about other characters in other books.
Right.
Carson of Venus talked about that he had read Burroughs's stories, and then Burroughs teaches him to communicate. And he said that he wanted to go, and Carson was originally, I want to go to Mars to fight alongside of John Carter, and he ends up on friggin' Venus. Boy, did he miss. But then you've got Pellucidar with David Innings at the Earth's core, the capacity. He built and I've said this before on these things, that he built the first
cinematic universe,
connected universe.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever explored. I mean, it even went into Tarzan. Tarzan went to Pellucidar, you know?
Oh, Tarzan, his parents are the parents of Elsa. Disney's confirmed that.
I know. I've heard all.
The thing that I want to see from a John Carter movie, that because unless someone other than Disney does it, I doubt I'll ever get to see it, is the proposal scene of John Carter to Dejah Thoris. Is, you know, they're invading Helium with all the green Martians to take back the city from the betrayal of I forget what the name of the evil red Martian was, but to take that back. So you've just got war and death going around everywhere. You've got green Martians just raiding the city, plundering it for all it's worth. You've got, airships falling out of the sky, buildings exploding. John Carter just killed a dude in a duel. And in the midst of all this, he just turns to Dejah Thoris and is like, let's do this thing. And that was it. It's like, that's their whole proposal is just surrounded by crazy nonsense. It would be such a cool scene. It's like, one of the best, and I never thought I would watch a movie like this, but Jane Eyre with Orson Welles in it is so. First of all, you know, they did Pride and Prejudice with zombies, and if I ever stop being lazy, I would love to do a treatment of Jane Eyre, because Jane Eyre would fit so well with Lovecraft, specifically the Dunwich Horror, with the way that book ends, where you find out the wife was locked up in the husband's castle all that time, and then she breaks loose and sets the whole place on fire, and he goes blind, and then their love brings his sight back. But that's a different thing. But in that movie with Orson Welles, the proposal scene in that is they're in like this, there's just a stone wall and like a dead tree in the background, and Orson Welles goes up to her and like grabs her by the arms, and you know, the very stern Orson Welles face, and he's like, you know, say it, you'll marry me. And then there's this huge lightning bolt that just strikes the tree in the background. I'm like, where are proposal scenes like this? This is amazing. This is good stuff. This is crazy nightmare fuel kind of stuff, but it's awesome. It's different.
You know, I think that if they'd allowed Deja Thoris to wear what she wore in the books, I think it would have gotten a bigger audience.
It would have got a different kind of audience. That's
yeah,
for sure.
And it would have really moved Disney into a new area. But yeah, like Cantus Can was one of my favorite characters because they had bigger roles in later books. You know, the fact of his son, you know, taking over, and some of the stories being about his son and his daughter, and it was a very generational story arc. But he was like the patriarch that always kind of everything revolved around. What was really good is I had a book and I loaned it to somebody, and they quit at HP and took it with them, and I never got it back. And it was famous authors were asked to write stories that fit into the War of the Worlds universe, H.G. Wells universe. So they did a Sherlock Holmes. They did an Arthur Conan Doyle.
I think Neil Gaiman did that one, Study in Emerald.
Yes. And then my favorite of it was the John Carter story, where he had gone to a part of Mars where he'd never been before, and finds the remnants of that race's place, where they launched the ships and everything. And then he gets attacked by some of the few mutated guardians that were dying and starving. And I was like, man, that is just, I love that book. And there was a friend of mine who was all into all the same things I was in. I was like, man, you got to read this. He goes, all right. I said, you know, he goes, I can't read it right now, but I'll read it and get it back to you. Okay. And then he quit. You son of a bitch.
Well, and then, you know, talk about series that, you know, only went so far. You know, the War of the Worlds TV show that was based off the original movie.
Well, it got 2 seasons and it actually ended the story, but
yeah,
and it got truncated really quick.
Mm-hmm.
That was on the Sci-Fi Channel back when they did really great stuff, but they would, if it didn't catch and it didn't hit a certain rating, they would pull it really quickly. So you get these great first seasons, and then the second season you knew that they would get even better and they'd get their footing and stuff, but Sci-Fi would never give them a chance. Now, if you were lucky, somebody else might pick the story up and run with it a little bit longer. But, you know, because I remember when Sci-Fi did both Dune and Children of Dune for the long miniseries, and I liked them better than I liked the Lynch movie. I liked the Lynch movie.
No, but those series are really good.
Yeah.
With what's his name? Professor X from First Class.
Yeah.
McAvoy.
James McAvoy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good stuff. I wish I could find them for a decent price.
I got him. I got him.
I know.
I got him. You know, we'll talk about how we can get you a copy.
Yeah. Maybe with the new movie coming out, they'll re-release all that stuff. That'd be pretty cool.
It would be nice. You know, I would like to see people. I'd like to see studios releasing some of their old work. You know, like there's tons of stuff in the MGM library that people have never ever seen, and it just sits there. And one day it's going to be forgotten and we won't even remember it. It'll be the Library of Congress from Logan's Run, that every time
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's gonna be like Logan's Run. It's like, what is this place?
you pick up the book and it crumbles in your hand,
the actual from the book, not the movie.
Yeah.
That's another thing that needs to be done, is a book adaptation.
Well, remember, Sci-Fi was supposed to do it, and at one point J.J. Abrams was involved in it, and it went nowhere.
Ken Levine, the guy who created BioShock, was
yeah.
So,
and it would be 3 movies because the 4th one was such a small book, and all it did was have Logan getting kidnapped by aliens, taken to an alternate universe, and having to do everything he did in the first universe, but do it better. And to save their universe. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is like you had nothing.
No idea.
How can I rehash what I've already done so I don't have to write a damn thing? Because the guy was kind of a lazy writer, but he had a good story.
Yeah.
And it would be really good to see what somebody who could take it and run with it could make. Besides, I prefer the 30-year-old limit. Having a bunch of 17-year-olds running around controlling everything kind of bothers me because I'm an old man.
Well, most of us are old men now, so we would all be dead anyway.
And then Francis was such a different type of character. He was ancient, remember?
Yeah.
He could make himself look like a young kid or a person, and he was the one who was in charge of Sanctuary. He was getting people up to the space station, and he was controlling everything out of the Washington Monument, which, if you remember, when the Washington Monument was built, it was supposed to be a giant archive. They actually built part of the chambers, and then they just no money went into it. Behind it, there's a door that was supposed to lead into a chamber where they would store all of our archives of all the greatest documents and stuff. But that was turned in the book was a giant computer complex that stored all knowledge of everything. And part of it had been corrupted and shut down, and he kept maintaining this one area to keep the Sandman from coming in.
But yeah, I think we need to, once we get Walter on, at one point we'll do something. But I do want to talk about like literature that needs to be put into film, or the mangas that need to be having a better adaptation of. Like, I'd love to see Akira as the manga run, not just the original movie. I mean, I love the original movie. So that's what got me into Akira, but the manga is hands down so much better. But,
I don't think they'll make a series franchise out of it. I think they'll try to do what they did in the first movie, so they can encapsulate the story.
Yeah, I know, but they need to, because that could be easily 300 episodes just to tell that whole storyline. But Gray Death Target would be really good, or Gray.
Yeah, Gray.
But because that's a whole thing, and we'll have to talk about that, because David needs to read that manga. I have the second one. I
have most of them.
Yeah.
I don't have that last one because the shop I was getting them at quit carrying them, and I was like, it's the last one. How can you not finish the story for me?
Gray. Okay, so the story of Gray basically is, and I want to do an episode on this and literally just talk about it because it's really good.
Well, don't do it here. We can do it when we do that.
Yeah. I'll just say, look, for anybody who's interested, look it up. The anime was called Gray Hard Target, I think, or Digital Target, and then
Digital Target. Yeah.
The manga was just called Gray.
And that is where I got my nickname on all the games that I used to play.
Yeah.
When I would put my name in them on my scores, it was Gray Death.
But yeah, let's wrap this up.
I know you got to go, but one question real quick before we head out. If you were to be able to travel in time and you could take 3 books with you, which would they be? Quickly.
Oh, damn it. Damn it.
Did I mess you up?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, let's cut it short because David's got to go, and I think I'm seeing sparks coming out of the back of his head.
See, every time I get asked questions like that, where it's like, because there's just so many, right? It's like, what's your favorite movie? I don't even know if I'll be able to give you top 5. It changes from day to day.
Yep.
It's
Okay, so what is one object you take with you?
an object.
Did it again.
I'm telling you, I really don't think through like
Well, just don't take a cell phone or a lighter because I think you're a witch.
Just remember a towel. You need to have a towel with you.
yes. It's been a long time since I read those books or seen that movie to remind me that yes, that's the most important object you could possibly take wherever you go.
So, all right, we're done. I don't want to break David too much.
All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dad Level Podcast. Tell us what you would take with you if you were jumping through time, maybe jumping to the future where everything was wiped out, but the human race was there to be saved. What books would you take with you? All right, until then, have a good one.
Night, everybody.